Yang Xinhai, a deformed child from a remote village, lived in Yangtaozhuang Village Group, Jiangye Administrative Village, Runningbu Town, Jianggang County, Henan Province. There were no passenger buses here. It was more than 3 kilometers from the village to Runningbu Town. The road was bumpy on sunny days. The road was almost turned over by large and small vehicles, making it difficult for ordinary tricycles to pass on rainy days. The mud on the road was almost bottomless. When people stepped on it, they couldn't pull their feet out, and vehicles simply couldn't pass. This was the only road from Yangtaozhuang to Runningbu Town. Among the more than 200 households in Yangtaozhuang, Yang Xinhai's family was extremely poor. His father, Yang Zhongguin, and mother, Yang Jiangxi, lived in a low thatch cottage they built themselves. It was in this low thatch cottage that the Yang couple gave birth to 6 children. In recent years, as the children grew up and became adults, they moved out one after another, but the old couple still lived here. In Yang Zhongguin's words, the house was now in a terrible state of disrepair when it rained. They had to cover the thatched cottage with a plastic sheet. One end of the thatched cottage was the bedroom of the Yang couple inside, apart from an old pine bed. There wasn't a single decent piece of furniture. The bedding on the bed was also patched in many places. Next to the pine bed was the old couple's kitchen. There was an iron pot on the stove, made of bricks and mud. Every time they cooked, the whole room would be filled with thick smoke, making it hard for people to breathe. Above, waist high on the 4 walls of the thatched cottage, were traces of being smoked and scorched by fire in particular. The roof was pitch black, looking as if it would drip oil at any moment. At the other end of the thatched cottage was a cattle trough. An emaciated draft ox that the old couple had raised was tied behind the trough during the day. Yang Zhongguin would lead the ox out or tie it under a tree outside the house at night. He would lead the ox into the house to feed it forage and then let it rest behind the trough. Cow dung and urine were also excreted there every morning. There would be a river of cow urine behind the trough every day. Yang Zhongguin would put soil clods under the ox's feet. The cow dung, urine and soil clods piled up thicker and thicker every once in a while. Yang Zhongguin would have to find someone to clean the cattle shed. As soon as one walked into this house, where humans and livestock lived together, there was both the smoky smell of rural cooking fires and a strong stench of cow dung and urine. This was the old house where Yang Xinhai was born. Yang Xinhai was born on July 17, 1968. He was born in the year of the monkey. He had 2 older brothers and an older sister above him, and a younger brother and a younger sister below him. Yang Xinhai's grandfather was classified as a landlord, and his family was also classified accordingly in that era when class status was emphasized. People with such class statuses were targets of political control. Therefore, when Yang Xinhai was very young, his family was discriminated against. When he was still a young and innocent child, he was often called a landlord's scion by his peers in the village, who mocked and insulted him, making him feel extremely humiliated. Even though she had many siblings, she felt a sense of loneliness in the village from a young age. Unconsciously, she distanced herself from the crowd, which led to her developing a solitary, introverted and quiet personality. Jianggang County belongs to Zhoumadian City, Henan Province. This is originally a relatively poor area. Yang Xinhai's parents had many children and high expenses, so their family was even poorer than the average household. Although Yang Xinhai had 6 siblings, no one in his family went to school or could read, because his parents had 6 children. Yang Xinhai, the 4th born, was not valued from childhood in Yang Xinhai's memory. No one ever bought him clothes, no one ever bought him his favorite food, and no one ever taught him to read and write. During the summer vacation of 1976, Yang Xinhai was already 8 years old for some reason. He suddenly had an urge to go to school and kept pestering his father about it. His father sighed and said, "It's not right that all 6 of you kids are illiterate, since the kid wants to go to school. Let him." His father took him to the school and signed him up. When the teacher tested him, it was found that this child was extremely smart. So, without having attended a single day of school, he was directly enrolled in the 2nd grade of primary school. Yang Xinhai knew it was not easy for his family to support his schooling, so he studied very hard from the start. His academic performance was always among the top in the class. Yang Xinhai's body didn't develop as fast as that of his peers, even though he didn't start school until he was 8 years old and was relatively older among his classmates. He wasn't tall. Moreover, the inherent pressure stemming from his family's landlord background had instilled in him a deep sense of inferiority at school. He was afraid of being bullied by others and didn't dare to talk to his classmates easily as soon as he got to school. He'd sit at his seat and read books after class. He wouldn't go out to play, except to use the restroom, since he dedicated all his attention to studying. His academic performance was always the best in the class. After school, when he got home, young Yang Xinhai often sat alone in a daze, staring blankly at one spot or an object for a long time. After staring for a while, it seemed like he'd figure something out. And then he'd try to draw what he saw at first. His drawings didn't look like the real thing, but as he kept drawing, they got better. He'd liked drawing ever since he started school. Once he got home, he'd always lock himself in his room to draw and write. According to the villagers, the kid was very smart from a young age and loved to draw. Whatever he drew looked like the real thing. In the 1970s, China's rural areas still followed the commune-based administrative system. All rural villagers were called commune members. Under the People's Commune were production brigades. And under the production brigades were production teams. The production team was the most basic economic accounting unit. The way production teams calculated the compensation for the members. Labor was to award work points according to their contributions. Members received food rations and participated in the year-end profit sharing based on the number of work points they had. To earn more work points for the family and relieve his parents' financial burden as soon as the weekend rolled around after school, Yang Xinhai would head to the fields to cut grass or gather gorse for the production team's livestock pen. Taking care of the cattle could directly earn work points in the eyes of the villagers. Young Yang Xinhai was a well-behaved, hard-working, and extremely honest child. He'd quietly go to school every day, and after school, he'd quietly make his way home. Once home, he wouldn't play with other kids. Instead, he'd play by himself in silence, never saying an extra word to anyone and never causing any trouble. According to a local police officer, Yang Xinhai was even too scared to kill a chicken when he was a child. They couldn't figure out how he'd turned into a bloodthirsty killer in Yang Xinhai's memory. 2 events left a huge shadow on his young mind. The first one probably happened when Yang Xinhai was in primary school at that time. His 2 older brothers and 1 older sister were already married. Only his parents, along with him, his younger brother, and his younger sister, a family of 5, lived in 3 shabby houses. The surrounding walls were made of earth dug from the ground nearby, and the roofs were covered with wheat straw. His parents slept in the east room, while he and his younger brother and sister slept in the west room. One afternoon, when he got home from school, he found the 3 shabby thatched houses in a mess. His father, younger brother, and younger sister weren't home. Only his mother was sitting alone in the yard, sobbing. He had a premonition that something unfortunate had happened at home. So he quietly sat beside his mother. His mother stopped crying, looked up at him, and hugged him tightly in her arms. Then she broke down in grief again, sobbing as she said, "Son, Your father took poison. How are we women and children going to live? Yang Xinhai consoled her mum. Don't cry, tell me slowly. Mum wiped away her tears and told him that afternoon, when his elder brother's child was playing in the field, he secretly picked some rape flowers from the production team and was caught by the production team's cadre immediately. A meeting of all the team members was called to criticize his elder brother, forcing him to admit that he had deliberately instigated the landlord Gao Zai to sabotage production. His elder brother said it was just because the child didn't know any better, and that he hadn't instigated him. The production team's cadre said his elder brother was being dishonest and wanted to fine him. Yang Xinhai's father, Yang Zhongguan, was also called to the criticism meeting to apologize when he got home. He kept sighing while his mother wasn't around, out of anger. He drank pesticide and tried to commit suicide. By the time his mother noticed, white foam was already coming out of his father's mouth. His mother quickly called his elder brother, and the whole family rushed his father to the hospital in a hurry. Now they still didn't know whether his father was alive or dead. Yang Jinhai wanted to go and see how his father was, but he didn't know which hospital his elder brother had taken him to for treatment. He looked up at the vast sky. The sun had already set. Without knowing when, the night had covered the earth suddenly. He had a feeling that the end of the world was coming. The boundless darkness seemed to exert an infinite amount of pressure on him, making him feel as if he couldn't catch his breath later. Although his father survived the great disaster, Yang Xinhai couldn't make sense of this incident at this time. He was already an 11-year-old primary school student and gradually had his own thoughts, as well as his own perception and understanding of the outside world. He thought that it was a very common thing for kids to play with rape flowers in the countryside. Why did it become a case of active sabotage when it happened to his family? Were the descendants of landlords and rich peasants always bad? Just because of such a trivial thing, they had to be criticized and struggled against. How could they live their lives from then on? Another thing happened after Yang Qianhai entered high school. By then, the rural administrative system had changed from people's communes, production brigades, and production teams to township governments, village committees, and village groups, with the reform of the administrative system. The view of class origin was also becoming less and less prominent. His family, like other villagers, was allotted contracted fields. Although the influence of class origin was fading, the class struggle consciousness that had been formed in people's minds over the years couldn't be completely eradicated all at once. Families like theirs, with a so-called high-class background, still felt too ashamed to hold their heads up in front of others. The year Yang Xinhai was just admitted to high school, his older brother needed to build a house. The village allocated a plot of land for building a house to his brother. His brother happily bought all the things needed for building the house and invited someone to choose an auspicious date, who picked an auspicious day on the Chinese lunar calendar to start building the house. However, right at the beginning of the construction project, a powerful family in the village took a fancy to this piece of land with good feng shui, an ancient Chinese belief about the arrangement of space to achieve harmony and good fortune. They also wanted to build a house on this plot. Of course, Yang Jinhai's older brother wouldn't allow it, and the two families ended up in a lawsuit after multiple attempts by the village committee cadres to mediate. The issues still remained unresolved in the end. Later, seeing that they couldn't forcibly take over the land, in order to prevent Yang Xinhai's older brother from finishing the house, the other family dug a big hole right on the land. Regarding what happened at that time, Yang Xinhai was powerless and didn't know what to say. But it left an indelible mark on his heart, in Yang Xinhai's own words. After experiencing all those things in his childhood, he felt that many things in this world were so unfair. Yang Xinhai spent his childhood in Jumadium Prefecture, which is part of the Huanghuai Plain the land there is quite fertile. But the population is dense, and the industrial and commercial sectors are underdeveloped. With so many people crowded on the limited land during the People's Commune period, most local households didn't have enough food. It wasn't until after the reform and opening up that the locals finally had enough to eat and clothes to wear, but they still had no money and no extra savings. A large number of the local labor force either went out to work in other places or stayed idle at home because there were no local industrial or commercial enterprises to be proud of. The Huanghuai High Plain is the most suitable area in China for large-scale agriculture, however. The large rural population there means that it's not possible to quickly implement large-scale agricultural operations. A large population relies on a limited amount of land for survival. The production efficiency is extremely low, and land has become the sole factor for maintaining subsistence as long as these hundreds of millions of people are on the land. They are not considered unemployed. Our country doesn't count these people as unemployed, and they don't enjoy any social security therefore. The poverty and backwardness here have never been effectively and rapidly improved. Yang Xinhai's home is only 66 kilometers away from the county seat. But he hadn't been to the county seat even after graduating from junior high school. The entire world he'd ever seen was the surrounding villages in dull brownish grey. The entire life he'd ever experienced was worrying about not having enough to eat all day long. Most of the memories he's left with are dull, colorless, and grey in high school. Yang Xinhai fell in love with literature after that. His Chinese grades were always relatively good later, although he dropped out of school midway. He still had a certain foundation in writing. After Yang Xinhai was arrested, he wrote a memoir in prison. The title of the first part was Nostalgia, which mainly recorded the impressions he'd left of his hometown in his childhood. It started like this. There's a winding small river to the west of our village. There's a bridge over the small river. That bridge left me with humiliating memories when we interviewed people in Yang Xinhai's hometown. Some villagers told us that when Yang Xinhai was a child, he not only liked painting, but also literature. We can imagine that if he had been born into a better-off family, his mum and dad would have been overjoyed at his budding painting talent. They would have been proud of his nascent literary flair. They'd have gone to great lengths to cultivate him, doing everything possible to help him and provide him with the opportunities and conditions to become a painter or a writer. If that had been the case, perhaps today he wouldn't at least be a murderer that everyone loathes. A despicable figure shunned by all, an incarnation of evil. The root causes of this are poverty, backwardness, and lack of education. These things are like a huge adobe brick, firmly pressing down on Yang Xinhai, who was just like a young sprout emerging from the ground, bending him out of shape and making him all crooked. Due to the emergence and expansion of such a mindset, he became a deformed person, developing a way of thinking different from that of ordinary people. Gradually, he turned into a cold-blooded killer.